Good morning. Let's see. Am I live? Yes, I am. Morning, everyone. This is Britt Simon. So, just the bad information out there. I seem to constantly be reading just nonsense comments, and there's so many people. So there's so many people who are being misled and wound up, and unnecessarily upset by people that probably think they're right, probably think they're helping others, etc. But they're really just confusing people. And along the way, people make up a lot of bullshit, and say some frustrating things. And it's frustrating because I can watch it happening. It's like a car crash in slow motion, and I honestly don't have time to correct all of the bad information out there. But with people going into Telegram channels and sharing information is a good, positive thing. The information we get from within the community is really important. It's brilliant. But the bad information, people are like, the Pied Pipers of bullshit. The stupid things people make up and the stupid things people find to obsess about. It's just amazing. So, so I'm going to try and correct some of the things. But, let me also just say, I saw a comment last night and I objected to it. It was a comment against another YouTuber, and this other YouTuber, he speaks Arabic. I don't know what he says, but it's unnecessary to be rude and mean about people that are just trying to put the information out there. And I need to hold myself to the same standard. I don't mean to be rude and mean about people who are mistakenly sharing information. That's not my intention. But I do object to people who have been told the correct information, who have the evidence in front of them, and choose continuously to mislead others about that and pretend like things are mysteries, etc. When they're not, and then to criticize someone, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's a YouTuber or whatever else, because that information being shared, which may or may not be accurate, I'm not even talking about the accuracy, but that information being shared isn't to their liking, so they criticize that person. It's like, grow up, people. Really, you're supposed to be adults. Everybody who's won a DV lottery must be an adult. That's the first thing. So behave like adults first and foremost. Frustrated this morning. Anyway. So let's okay, so let me just check this. Okay, so Jihad Vodi, you led many of the DV winners to make mistakes. Please explain to me, Jihad. I'll wait. I'll look for your comments. Please explain to me how, in your mind, I've led people to make a mistake. I'd love to hear it. Give me some evidence, but back it up with the place, not what you heard I said. Not what you think I said, not what you think I said when you didn't listen to everything I said. Give me the evidence of where you're saying I've led people to make a mistake, because you're wrong. You're actually just wrong. I mean, I can predict how this conversation is going to go, but by all means, give me the evidence, Jihad. That'd be awesome. Thank you. I'll try and look out for your comment. So let's deal with a few obvious things. I want to talk about DV 2020 and DV 2021 first, to try and sort of explain what's going on there, and then we'll move on to DV 2022, and I'll try and keep it that way. So if I were you, I would generally hold your comments for a few moments, because I'm just going to talk to those 2 years. First of all, DV 2020 and 2021. So where are we at? I suppose looking back, I should probably have been a bit clearer that once the appeal was lodged of the September 9th decision, which came within 24 hours or so of the deadline for them to do that. I was pretty convinced they were going to start appealing all of the cases, and I still am of that belief. I think they've still got a few days to appeal the Gomez case. But what they appealed a September 9th order, and that was the first appeal that the government made. But the only reason you would appeal that one is because you were going to appeal the others. So I was pretty sure at that time, and I probably did. I mentioned it. I mentioned it to one of the lawyers, I believe, on an online chat. The reason I think they did that was because they wanted to keep appeal possibilities open. So I wasn't 100% certain, but I was reasonably confident that we would see appeals in every one of the lawsuits, and we now have that, right? So we have whether they've lodged them all or not. I don't think they've lodged them all, but DV 2021 cases are being appealed. DV 2020, the 9,095, that will be appealed, I believe. They can't really succeed in a DV 2021 appeal that they have lodged if they don't battle the 9,095 from DV 2020. DV 2020 was the case that sort of opened up the possibilities, and DV 2021 used many of the same arguments, etc., in front of the same judge to achieve a similar result. And so they have to attack DV 2020 if they are to succeed in the DV 2021 appeals. So I think I would be very surprised if they don't attack DV 2020. Now, what does that mean for DV 2020 and DV 2021? Well, the judge gave the government until the end of this fiscal year, so the 30th of September 2022, as a deadline to finish the processing on those cases, right? He didn't give them a must start by date. And so the government could play things a couple of ways. They could apply for a stay. A stay is sort of like, an argument to stop the deadline, if you like, stop the deadline entirely, stop the process to allow their appeal to go ahead, or they could process the 2020 and 2021 cases. I know there's a technical limitation that's stopping them processing the 9,095 and the DV 2021 cases to do with visa issuance. It's not strictly speaking visa issuance, in my opinion. It's actually visa approval. The issuance of a visa after the 30th of September deadline is absolutely normal. It happens every year. You know, if you go for interview on 30th of September, your visa is issued in October. So it's not the issuance that's the problem. It's the approval of the case that's the problem. It can't be done after the end of the year. So they've got to fix that from a technical point of view, but frankly, that could be fixed pretty easily. They've got time to fix that. But will they start cases? Will they start processing? And when, right? We don't know when. The judge didn't make it a rule that they have to start by a certain date. And yes, there are certain reports due in January, but the government can say, well, we haven't started yet. There's nothing wrong with that, because Judge Mehta didn't say you must start by this date, right? As long as they believe, as long as they are willing to comply with the order by 30th of September 2022, they can start whenever they want, right? So, for those of you waiting for the Gomez case and the 2021 cases, you're going to have to be patient. If you are a good luck case plaintiff, you already know you have to be patient until about April anyway, because the whole case is going to take at least that time. But these appeals could take over a year, right? So the government might say, look, it's going to take us more than a year to appeal this. And therefore, they may apply for a stay of the earlier order to stop the processing, in which case things will go on longer. That's part of the legal system. Many of you from countries with different legal systems don't understand why it's so complex in America. I can tell you the American legal system is based loosely on the British legal system. And both sides have their rights to sort of argue things out. things are not black and white, things are not very simple. It's just not, it just doesn't happen like that, right? And so you have to be patient. Now, if you don't have patience and you don't want to wait, you don't have to wait. You can move on with your life and you can forget you ever won the DV lottery. That's your other choice, right? And it's not a very good choice, and I'm not recommending that choice. But the only other way is to just be patient and wait, and not try and let the emotion and the frustration eat you up inside. You have to just be patient. Find a way of being patient to let this process go through. To let the process go through and take its time. Okay, so Jihad, did you answer me with the evidence that I asked for? I doubt it, but let me just look. Jihad, no, I don't think I see any comment. No, so you're just one of those people, Jihad, that just wants to talk shit, make stupid comments without any basis for that. And you can't back up your comments. And there's a lot of people like you. So why are you even here? Why are you listening to me? It's a voluntary thing. You don't have to participate in this live. If you're only come here to bring negativity, why? Just go away. Nobody will miss you. All right. Have a nice day. Okay. So that's 2020 and 2021 covered. Let's talk about DV 2022. The frustration I have at the moment is that so many people are making up stories about how the processing works and whether you've got the document request and whether you're DQ'd and whether unlocking affects your case and all this sort of thing. And those questions have become amplified in the community, and there's lots of assumptions being made. So, for example, because May had, we got the results, I think it was on May 8th. So there were about 3 full weeks of processing time, maybe a little bit more, let's say 22, 23 days. In that time period, many people, probably 25 or 30% of people submitted their DS-260s. 25 to 30%, I would say, of the people that knew they wanted to participate, right? Contrary to what's being said, I was not telling people to not submit your DS-260. I did say, if you've got a high case number, don't rush to submit your DS-260. I always say that every year, because there's no reason to declare immigrant intent until you find out whether your case number is going to be even possible to process. I also told people, I see every year people rushing to submit their DS-260, and they make silly mistakes. They constantly make silly mistakes, which causes them to unlock, right? And so I've said time and time again, just like I do every year, don't rush to submit your DS-260 if you're then going to make a mistake, right? That's not the same as saying I said, which some people say, that I said nobody should submit their DS-260 early. I didn't say that. Of course I didn't say that. Now, people are also saying that the DS-260 processing by submission date is a new thing this year, or that there's some other new thing. There is no new thing this year. It's the same process it's been for years. The document procedure was put in place in, I think it was 2018 from memory. I've got the dates, but it was from about 2018 or perhaps 2017. But the DS-260s were always processed in submission order, always, right? What's changed is since 2017, 2018, when the document procedure was put in place, documents are processed by case number order. However, with the amount of work that KCC have been doing, I don't believe they've ever created a backlog for the secondary team. So to try and explain what I mean is there are 2 teams, right? One processes the DS-260s and the other processes documents. They're totally separate teams. The 2 can't mix. They don't communicate very well, or they haven't up to now. I think that might be changing, but up to now they've not communicated very well. There were these 2 separate teams because the documents processing team, which was about 5 people, was a new department introduced 3 or 4 years ago, right? 4 years ago. So when that was introduced, a government process being what it is, there's someone who's in charge of that department that is not in charge of the other department, and the 2 of them don't communicate. it's politics. It's, you know, what can I say? Is office politics, not Republicans and Democrats. I mean, it's you know, office politics, because one person isn't running both teams. They, you know, people like to create their little kingdoms. It's annoying, sort of thing I destroy every day. Anyway, so those two teams being separate has led to difficulties, right? If the DS260 team are not processing enough DS260s, and they didn't work for 3 or 4 months, if they're not processing enough DS260s, then the documents team will process any case number, because within a given day, there's not enough cases coming into their team for there to be a backlog. So there might be a huge backlog of cases in the DS260 group, but they've not been processing cases very fast at all. We've not seen a lot of DRs, document requests being sent out, at least in the time that we've had. There was, in my belief, there was a period of time when they basically didn't work on DV 2022, or they did very little, which was from late May and included June, July, August, and probably most of September. And we know that because, because there were virtually no interviews in October. In the whole world, they only issued 10 visas in October, right? Which is probably 4 cases, I believe. Four cases. It was in 2 embassies, 7 at one, 3 at the other. So clearly there was no work being done, or very little work being done in May and June and July, when they should have been doing work. And in a normal year, they can actually get some cases DQ'd before the beginning of the year, before October. So they would normally have done that. But they didn't do that this year. And so that created a difficulty. The reason they didn't do it was because they focused on DV 2021. And also, once DV 2021 was over, right, at the end of September, at that time period, the Tier 4 prioritization scheme was still in place. And it seems to me, and this is just a guess, that they almost match the workload in the KCC department as a whole to the expectation of how many appointments they can get through the system. And if the expectation for appointments is low, then they don't do a lot of work, right? Now, I've speculated in the past that that's to do with the funding method for KCC, which comes from the visa fees. The KCC employees are not government employees, right? So if there's a government shutdown, for example, the KCC department continues. It doesn't shut down. That's because those staff are not government employees. They are contract staff. And the contract is funded through the Department of State, through the visa fees that we pay, the $330, right? So it's a sort of an almost natural but kind of an annoying reduction in effort, because there's a reduction in the amount of capacity in the embassies, right? I wish they wouldn't do that, but it certainly appears that they do that, and that causes difficulties. All right, so so now people have been looking at the number of cases processed in May, which is, it's been quite low, and people have been saying, oh, there's 20 DRs sent out today, 20, 25, there's 20. So people have then used that number to calculate how long it would take to get to the June and the July submissions. And from there, people have been totally wound up and saying, oh my God, I submitted my DS260 in July or in August. At present rate of processing, they won't get to my case until September next year. That's the bullshit. That's the bullshit that is coming out, that everyone's believing in, because they don't understand that what we've been measuring up to now, what we've been seeing up to now, is a broken process, right? It was broken because there was 3 or 4 months of delay where they did very little work. It was then further broken because the Tier 4 prioritization reduces the amount of effort that KCC puts in based on the capacity of the system, the embassies and so on. And so it's a broken process. So it's pointless to measure that. So, if you're driving your car at 5 miles an hour and you've got a 1,000-mile journey, it's going to take you a lot of hours to get on your 1,000-mile journey, right? But all you need to do is put the accelerator down and the experience will be very different. And so what I'm saying to people is, look, calm down. We're seeing some signs of life, as I put it in a post the other day, at KCC. And this is what you need to be focusing on, not all the other bullshit. We need to be focusing on whether KCC now changed their working methods, right? Not in what they're doing, because they're going to continue doing what they've always done. They're going to process DS-260s in date submission order. They're going to process documents in case number order. But if there are very few DR level DS-260s, then they will get to any case number. It's not, they will get to a higher case number. I've explained this before. I don't think I need to explain it again. I've made several videos about this, so I really don't want to get into that again. But it's not, my explanations have not been proved incorrect. So if you don't believe my explanations, it's because you're wrong. And if you're believing other people, you're wrong. Anyway. So we're going to see, I believe, KCC start to process in a more normal way. They can process between about 5,000 and 7,000 cases per month through the DS-260 processing phase, if they're staffed appropriately. Now, we don't know their staffing levels at the moment. They may have had some COVID impact. They may have staffing levels reduced because of, all sorts of reasons, either the COVID crisis or because they're working from home, and, for various reasons, they could have reduced staffing. But just recently, we saw a couple of very interesting things. In the last week or so, they've started to answer emails very quickly, within a few hours, right? So there's been a backlog of emails that we've been experiencing and enduring for well over a year, right? Probably 18 months. Where if you emailed KCC, you wouldn't expect a reply from them for any email for at least 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. It was taking a long time to get an email back. If you email them now, and unless you all decide to go and email them for stupid reasons, but if you email them now for a legitimate reason, you're getting a reply back pretty quickly. That to me says they've got enough resources to actually be going through their email inbox. Secondly, the replies that they've given to people are pretty good. So, for example, I saw a couple of people the other day that where the response from KCC was things like, "We have got your documents and we're working on them." It's very good that they're finally saying, "We have got your documents," right? Before, they wouldn't even say they had the documents. It was like the documents team wouldn't even have a method of communicating that the documents have been received. And now it seems that there is some method of communication, at least between those two teams. So when you send in an email, they're able to say, "Yeah, look, we've got your documents. We're working on it, be patient," or whatever. And then they give you the normal, cases are processed in case number order, blah, blah, blah. You have to wait until you're current, right? But the point is that they've told people that they have received documents. That's a good thing. And so there were two signs based on the emails that people are receiving from KCC. I was really pleased about that. And then one other sign that KCC are sort of working better is that they continue to release 2NLs a couple of days after the end of the month. I think it was the 2nd or 3rd of the month. Now, they wouldn't normally do that, right? That was evidence, in my opinion, similar to what we have seen in the past, where they got going after the removal of a proclamation. It was evidence that they were trying to get a number of interviews into January schedules. And so I was pleased to see that they were doing that. And of course, that takes them extra effort. And they could easily say, well, it's the end of the month, so we sent out the last of our 2NLs for the month. But lo and behold, probably on the 2nd or the 3rd of this month, we saw 2NLs go out to a number of cases. Now, I don't know how many cases got the 2NLs this month, but I would imagine that it's probably over 1,000 2NLs for January interviews, right? And so the fact that they did that, which was in response for the removal of the tier 4 processing, that was a good sign. Okay, so a couple of good signs of life. I posted on Twitter the other day. There are signs of life, and those are the two sort of signs, or three signs, if you want to put it that way. The email response, the quality of the email response, and the timing of the email response, and then this extra effort they put on scheduling 2NLs for January. Those are all positive things, right? So if that means that KCC now start processing at good speed, they can process between 5 and 7,000 DS260s per month if they're fully resourced, and we could fairly quickly get through the backlog of DS260 submissions, and you'll see June and July cases being processed fairly soon. We won't know for sure for like 2 or 3 weeks from now, probably, but in the next, let's say, I would expect, and this is sort of a prediction, but I would expect that we would start to see more activity from KCC by about June. Moving into June, submissions by about the end of December. Now, bearing in mind that December is Christmas. This holiday season has several short days in it, short weeks rather. So it's never the best time to start predicting a high activity. But I think they are trying to do something. So let's hope so. Let me just look for Jihad. Yeah, don't think he's still nothing. So let me take a couple of questions then. So I just saw one here. What is tier processing? Tier processing, Epic Gaming was there was a prioritization scheme put in place. It was not legal. It was about to be challenged by a lawsuit by Curtis Morrison, and just as Curtis Morrison announced his lawsuit, the government removed the tiered processing scheme. It had been found to be not legal by Judge Mehta in the DV 2021 case, but the government continued to apply it to all immigrant visa processing, and it put DV cases at the bottom level, or tier 4, at the bottom level of the prioritization. It meant that we couldn't get very many cases through for interview. They removed that a couple of weeks ago. That's a big relief. I say a couple of weeks ago. It was about three or 4 weeks ago now. Well, that's a big relief. I'm glad we didn't have to sue to achieve that. I was a bit concerned about Curtis's lawsuit, as I explained on a video. I wanted the tier 4 processing challenge, but the people signing up for that lawsuit were not going to be helped with what I think they will need to be helped with later on. So anyway, that's what tier processing is. Is this good? KCC have received your documents and our time for processing documents in numeric order. Is it good? Yeah, I mean, they're giving you a response. You asked them about your case, I would imagine. They gave you a response, and they're saying that they've received your documents. That's a good thing, that they're saying they've received your documents. So they have responded to some people that we haven't received your documents. So someone thinks they've sent their documents, but it hasn't gone through. And in those cases, I suspect that's probably limitations of the email sending system. So like Gmail, for example, has a 25 megabyte limit. You can't send more than 25 megabytes on a Gmail email. You can't send it, right? And what happens is you attach your documents, and without you really being aware of it, Gmail converts those documents into links, and the links are not able to be processed by the KCC system. So if you've got a bunch of PDFs that add up to more than 25 megabyte, or even close to 25 megabyte, because there's an expansion, you need to reduce the amount of space your documents are taking up. You need to either split them up into multiple emails or save them again with lower file size, which is possible. Okay, so other questions. So I'm going to start taking some questions now. Okay, so yeah, let me address this. So I've also seen comments that I saw one this morning that says, according to Brit Simon, it's illegal to do, and I'm like, I never said that. Why are people, saying things that I've said? I haven't said that. Anyway, when you have a group of cases that are all current and all documentarily qualified, the order applied to the scheduling, once all of those cases are qualified, actually all ready to be scheduled, if they were all at the same embassy, then the date of documentarily qualified, the date of DQ becomes important. That's the most that's the next level of of prioritization after the case number. So the case number is always first and foremost, is always most important. If you're not current for an interview, you can't be scheduled, right? That's basically the restriction on case number. Once your case is current, though, and once other cases are current, then the date of DQ is important. Now, there are going to be some cases that will not match this pattern, and I'm bound to see someone saying, "Oh, but look at this case. They were scheduled on the 10th of the month, and this other case was scheduled on the 5th of the month, and the DQ date is, I'm going to find that, right? Because obviously, I mean, I don't know. It's obvious to me, but if two people are doing a job of scheduling interviews at a particular embassy, it is possible for them to say, oh, look, we've got the embassy capacity is 50 people, 50 appointments. We've got 20 people who need scheduling. You take 10, I'll take 10. We'll just set them up, right? And they'll go within DQ order within the 10 they have, each one of them. But there could be more than one person working on that. And so you could have a slight mismatch in terms of that DQ date thing. It's not a law that says you have to apply this DQ order, the DQ date order. And there isn't a law that says when two cases are current, you have to sort of go by the case number within those cases. Once they're current, all cases are current. It's not, there are not laws that make it illegal for them to schedule out of order according to what you think should be the order, right? However, if the embassy capacity is only 20 cases and there are 50 cases that need to be scheduled, then the DQ date order is very important, right? Because what happens, as we saw in DV 2021, is they'll say, okay, there are 50 people who want appointments. We've only got capacity for 20. So we'll take those first 20 and the 30 will wait until the next month. And there may only be 15 appointments available next month, which meant some people were waiting for 2 and 3 and 4 months, even though they were documentarily qualified, right? And in some cases, people didn't even get an interview because there were too many people who were DQ'd in front of them, right? So we know DQ date order is a thing. We know that that is the order that they apply when cases are current. But it can happen because the whole region has gone current, or because there are multiple cases below a number that are all current, right? So, but of course, this is one of the things that people misinterpret and make up some bullshit about, because they find some case, they'll find one case, and they'll build a theory based on that one case. I saw a guy do that the other day. Can't remember his name, but there was one guy who had one case that didn't fit an explanation, so he's built a whole theory based on that one case. Crazy. I'm just gonna show this Dr. Gaming and then turn it off. You've pasted the same thing over and over again. I'm not going to answer spammers, right? So don't do that. MID. Thank you for your assistance. I submitted DS260 in mid of August and your AS 22,000. When did KCC stop receiving document? When they stop receiving documents, right? There isn't really a time. There's no set date when they'll stop sending out document requests and that sort of thing. There is kind of a final date, but it's not a specific date, right? So firstly, I would say your DS260 submission in the middle of August 2021, they will get to that, right? I don't doubt that. But your case number is high, right? And so it's going to be months before you're ready to be scheduled anyway. I don't know whether they're going to go current with all regions or not. We'll have to wait and see how many cases. It's actually determined by how many cases they process to DQ. So we'll have to see whether they actually put their foot down on the gas pedal. But your question is about when KCC stopped receiving document. Let me explain it a different way. The final interviews for September of next year will be arranged in July of next year, right? And they're arranged based on cases that are documentarily qualified by the end of June or very early July, right? So that is the sort of the deadline. Without a lawsuit that extends that time period, that's it. The July processing is the final time, right? They won't, in August, they'll be scheduling DV 2023 interviews, right? They'll have moved on to the next year. However, a lawsuit could change that, as it did in DV 2021, as it did in DV 2022. 2020. So you're asking when they'll stop sort of processing documents. What that means is you need to have your documents sent in and processed, and your DS-260 processed. May is really the deadline for that. You need to get them in, by May. And they will. I have seen in prior years they've processed a couple of cases in late July and even early August, but that's not the norm. That's just for a few cases here and there. It's not going to be the norm because they'll have moved on, right? And so without a lawsuit, you need to think of, the amount of processing we've got until about May of next year, okay? Which is why, by the way, I've been explaining to people that we've had about 6 or nearly 7 months of processing time out of the time we've got, right? It's a lot of time has been lost. And it does concern me a little bit because KCC have got to massively increase their speed up to that 5,000 or 7,000 cases a month we know they can process. They've got to do that. If they don't do that, then we're going to have a serious problem at the end. We won't have enough cases processed, right? Do I have an update on Sydney Embassy? Not really. Sydney, if you're local, Raj, you probably know better than I, but they have had a lockdown that stopped them working. They're moving the embassy. That had some impact. There was some suggestion that the Melbourne embassy or consulate was going to take up some of the slack, as it were, for some immigrant visas, but I'm not sure that includes DV cases. You'll probably know more about that embassy than I will. Okay. Don't spam, please. Yeah, absolutely right. Right, now, let's see. Faisal. You have a B1, B2 visa. If I win the lottery, can I and should I fly to the US and get my status adjusted rather than the normal route? It's faster or more reliable? It's a tough question, Faisal, I have to say. It's not a simple process. The adjustment of status process is not that simple. And one of the biggest problems I can see is that you would have to sort of do this. Let's say you were able to enter under your B1, B2. You would have to wait 60 days, even if you're current now. And this assumes that you're current, right? If you're current now, you would wait 60 days. You can't work during that time period, right? You've got a B1, B2. You can't work. How do you sustain yourself? And then you've got to wait, it could take 3-4 months or something before your case is actually processed through the adjustment of status process, right? It's not a quick thing. And it's a somewhat stressful experience. I did my own case, a DV case, through adjustment of status, and it's stressful. So it sounds like a good idea until you realize that you're going to have to not work for 6 or 7 months or something. How are you going to support yourself? If you break the laws, like you go and work, you do a job while you're here waiting for adjustment of status, you'll be denied, right? So you can't break the laws. You've got to respect the laws, which means you're not entitled to work. And you have to, obviously, you've got to wait until you're current to actually submit your paperwork. So it's not a great idea normally. It can be for some people. I'm not saying it doesn't work for everybody. There are some people that can do it. And and for them it's possibly a good idea. But first and foremost, figure out, are you current? When are you going to be current? Can you support yourself? Do you have lots of money in the bank where you can support yourself and just not work for 6 months, while you're in the States, right? Do you have family to support you? You have to think about that, right? It's not an easy process. I as I say, I went through it myself. Yeah. Hassan, stop repeating this question. I think I've answered it. Is it normal not receiving DQ till now? DS260 was submitted 30th of June. It's not normal in a normal year, but it's normal for everybody right now. In DV 2022, yes, it's normal because they didn't work for 3 or 4 months, right? They should have done June. The May and June processing should have been done before they even started the year, before 1st of October. But it wasn't because they stopped working. So we're now all getting stressed because because that would normally have been taken care of earlier in the year, and it's not happened this year, right? So is it normal? Not normal, but it is normal for everyone else. So be a bit patient. I'm saying 30th of June. I mean, they should get to you, I would say, within a few weeks. All right. Hi, Faddy. How you doing? Do you think DOS will repeat the same mistake? Yes. Let me read the rest of your message. This year, by making all regions current early due to the shortage in DS260, that this year most of the DQ would have a high number. Yeah, no, it's so frustrating. I do tell people, as I say, if you've got a high number, I tell people to be cautious about filing their DS260 if they have a high number because of the immigrant intent. They're going to declare immigrant intent. And if they don't ever get current, that could be a problem. But your question is about, will they go current? So let me explain that. Charlie Oppenheim just retired, right? But there's going to be a replacement. I don't know his or her name yet, but there's going to be a replacement probably that will work on the same basis. The basis they use to determine whether they should go current or not for the region is based on demand and capacity, right? But mainly demand. The demand is based on cases documentarily qualified. And in recent past years, KCC DQ'd so few cases that the visa office, Charlie Oppenheim, put the regions current when they really shouldn't have gone current. There were more people who wanted the visas than there were visas available, right? But by going current on all the regions, it helped the adjustment of status cases. It allowed those cases to file early and that sort of thing. And so it was advantageous for some people, but it caused difficulties. It caused chaos. Will they do it again this year? It's a really good question. I think they have until about February. I think it's probably February or perhaps March. Charlie Oppenheim explained this, I think last year, or I think this was last year. The timing of when he sort of takes the amount of documentarily qualified cases into account to decide whether there's enough demand, right? So the visa office, Charlie Oppenheim, or whoever is his replacement, will look at the DQ cases coming from KCC. If there's a big amount of DQ cases, they're going to say, oh, well, we better work through those. We don't want to make all the regions current. It's going to cause a lot of difficulty that all these cases will suddenly become current. We can't handle that, right? So they will, if they see a lot of DQ cases, they're less likely to go current. If, on the other hand, they see very few DQ cases, they think, well, hang on, there's obviously nobody's interested in a green card this year, right? We've asked 119,000 people to process their cases, and we only have this many documentarily qualified cases, so we can go current with all the regions, right? They shouldn't do that, but they do that based on the bad information coming to them from KCC. If KCC don't do their job properly, then that becomes more likely that we have the regions go current before they should do, or they shouldn't ever go current. So I don't know. I mean, what will happen? It depends. Literally, it depends what happens over the coming weeks. If KCC suddenly get their act together and start processing a lot of cases, then the demand that they're reporting to the visa office each month will be quite high. And as long as they start processing, by case number order, because it's the low case numbers that are obviously more important to be reported to the visa office, right? So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but it's a coin toss right now. I couldn't guess what's going to happen on that at this point. We'll have to wait and see, but we'll see in the next 3 or 4 weeks what the activity is from KCC, and whether these signs that I've seen that I explained earlier, whether the signs of life actually do mean something. Let's hope that they are. Okay, Orkan or Orson, I'm not sure. Question: I have a 20+ CN number and sent DS on July. What do you think with this case? There is no unlock, so I don't need it. Unlocking, that's another thing that's been, just hopelessly confused information in these Telegram channels, etc. Okay, so Orkan, for your question, you haven't given me the region, and your 20+ case number doesn't mean anything. You mean 20? You mean literally 20? And do you mean which region? OC, South America, Asia? Which region? Right? It doesn't make any sense. But your DS-260 was submitted in July. Your DS-260 won't be processed for another few weeks because of the way they're processing cases. Right now they're finishing up May, and I think they've done a few early June cases. But as I say, I'm expecting the pace to accelerate pretty quickly over the coming weeks. But yeah, I don't know what your 20+ case number means. Please make it clear, right? Floorjan, I have twice email from KCC inside of 1 week to send my documents. Send my documents when I get a second last email from 2nd of October. I've not got DQ. Can I send them again? Floorjan, if you keep sending your documents without it being necessary, it could complicate things, right? It could confuse them. Somebody was asking me on Twitter this morning, what can I do? What can I do? I've done this, I've done that. What can I do? And sometimes the only answer is, look, you need to stop and wait. You need to actually just slow down, take a breath, relax, and wait, right? Because you can't make things happen. You can't force them to do anything. By sending your documents lots of times, all you're doing is confusing the workers there, right? So if you're convinced 100% sure that you've sent your documents in good order, that you've done the right things, you've followed the instructions on sending your documents, then just for a little while, just wait. Think about when you submitted you got the DR. So you got DR, so you must have submitted your DS-260 in May, probably. And now you sent documents, but just, for the time being, wait. And consider that at some point, we'll start to see them actually ordering by case number. So if you've got a low case number, you could get processed. But if you get a high case number, some people from now will begin to see the much longer waiting times for documents to be processed for higher case numbers. It's not happened up to now. The process has had so few DS-260s sent through the system that they've been able to DQ cases at high case numbers and low case numbers and everything else. But at some point, we're going to see a backlog of DS-260s ready for document processing. Documents will be submitted for those cases, and then we'll really see the effects of them working by case number order for documents, right? For documents, people, not the DS-260. Okay. Reciprocity page, police certificate not required for Iranian applicants. Yep, but I got one. Should I send it? Yeah, if you got one, send it. It won't cause a problem. They're just not expecting it, right? But that's fine. Go ahead and send it. DV 2022, case number 11K. Got DR, good. December 2. When do you think I'll get my 2NL? Case number 11K. 11K what? Asia? Europe? Africa? I don't know. You have to tell me. Oh, you're Albania, so you're EU 11K. Well, you're not current yet. You're going to be current probably next month, right? So you won't get your DQ until you might, well, you got DR, you've sent documents, so you might get your documents processed in time to get a 2NL for a February interview, which would come in the month of December, late December. But if not, it'll probably be a January 2NL for a March interview, depending on when you sent your documents and that you got all your documents right. That's how that will work. Thanks for taking the time. 2022 winner with a high case number 26K. What region? Oh, EU. Sorry, I'm going to read it. EU 26K. Yeah, it's pretty high. You currently have a student visa with the COVID situation. Do you think AOS would be more beneficial? No, you see that, or is it Orion? That would be risky because switching to adjustment of status means that you can't file until your case number becomes current, right? You can't file your IA 485 package till then. So you could find yourself in a position where you're in America, you're a student, so you can't work in America, and you'll be delayed, and you'll be unable to work, etc., and support yourself, while you're waiting. So it's a toss-up. I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens with case numbers. And I don't know the density prior to 26K to know how many people are before you, ahead of you in line. But I suspect there's probably quite a few, right? So for now, I would say, look, it's early December. There's no need for you to make a decision about this now. Wait a couple of months, see how things are processing, whether your chances looks better through consular processing or whether to switch to adjustment of status, right? But you don't need to make this decision yet. Wait at least a couple of months, okay? Orkan, I already answered. Do you have any info about Iraqi DV winner 2022? No, but I did see. I did see that Curtis, I think, is going to file a lawsuit for. I think it's for Iraq. Is it Iraq? Yeah, I think it's Iraq. Because the government have not made it clear which embassy will take the cases, and so he's going to try and issue a lawsuit to try and force that point. I haven't read much about it. I don't quite know what he's doing on that. I don't know whether it's a good idea or not a good idea. But I'm aware that there are several embassies like Afghanistan and Iraq, etc., where people are they just aren't being given good information. I'm hoping that within a month or two, we start to hear better information from the government. Based on, up to now they've been able to sort of claim the tier 4 prioritization and everything else. But pretty soon they need to actually say, no, we're processing at full speed, and here is, it's what's happening. Of course, all of this is subject to the COVID situation in various countries. There could easily be another wave of the pandemic. I don't know why my dog's gone nuts, but excuse. Just wait for this stupid dog. So, Poppy. You see, my dog doesn't listen to me either, just like many of you. So the embassies, Poppy, the embassies that have no ability to process the cases, and there are many of those. They are a problem, but hopefully, let's say, in January, I'm hoping that we're going to start hearing some information about more of those. They have published, the government have published a list of alternative embassies for a number of embassies, but Iraq and Afghanistan, interestingly, are not on that list at the moment. So, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Okay, so you're DQ since early November, waiting for an interview in Paris. Is it supposed to take long to be scheduled? No, you've since early November. So I would have expected, for example, that if you really were, it depends how early in November, the interviews the interviews arranged in November are based on cases that were DQ'd prior to the end of the the previous month, right? So prior to the end of October, and usually a few days into the beginning of the month as well, usually. So I would be surprised. You might have been, depending on when you were DQ'd, you might have expected an interview actually for January, but more likely, I would suspect that you would get a February interview. You'll get a 2NL in December, right? And when Paris is set up for interviews, I don't know. Now, I don't know the open status of Paris, but I'm assuming it's open based on reasonable COVID numbers there, right? So yeah, think of, hope for 2NL this month. Right. Sydney, Raj, let's just, welcome back, Brett, with your vast experience on how slow KCC is. Do you think case number AF15K can be eligible? Yeah, AF15K will be eligible for an interview. The question is, no DR, DQ, the case may be current in February. Yeah, exactly. You're going to be current in February, but you have to get DR and DQ. And so I can't tell you about your specific case because I don't know when you submitted your DS260, when you did your documents, how complex your case is, and that sort of thing. But 15K, yeah, it could be eligible. There will be some people at your case number or higher that will get interviews and get issued. So, fingers crossed for you. Okay, there's a conversation between you guys. Just did that one. Dr. Gaming. Okay, Jenny. AS 4000. Yes, submit on 15th of May. Document submit 17th of October without DR. Inquiry sent 16th of November, and they answered that your forms have been processed. You unlocked on the 17th of November and submitted one day afterwards. DQ. Okay, so the unlocking question. Does unlocking affect a case? Generally, it depends what you unlock for. Now, please, many of you need to understand you don't need to unlock for trivial details, right? Trivial detail is if you got a phone number wrong at one of your jobs, or the day you finished your education 10 years ago, you put the date wrong by 2 or 3 days, right? You put June 10th and it should have been June 15th. For God's sake, don't unlock to correct stupid mistakes like that. Little mistakes, trivial mistakes. No need to unlock. Now, on the other hand, if you've missed something from your travel history, if you've missed out your education history, if you've missed out names, something that will be significant to your DS260 and could give the appearance of being dishonest, then absolutely you should unlock, right? The question of whether it will cause a delay or not depends on where your case got to. It depends on what you changed, right? How complex is it? What you changed? How important that thing was? Because if, for example, if you're submitting an unlock because you realized you forgot to detail your travel history throughout the Middle East in 2 or 3 countries, and you forgot to mention that, and all of a sudden you submit that, they're going to say, whoa, this person's got a travel history through the Middle East. They're a nuclear rocket scientist. We better have a look at that one, right? So that could obviously slow the case down simply because of what you changed, as opposed to you changed the phone number of a previous employer 2 or 3 jobs ago. That just that's not important. Now, having said that, along with the importance of the level of the change, is like, when did you submit that unlock request and when did they do that? And at what point were you in that processing? Were you already documentarily qualified? Obviously, that in some cases, unlocking after DQ can cause them to reprocess your case, right? Depending on what you add. If you get married or if you add another country, they might need to have more documents from you. On the other hand, if you'd received the document request, which is, I think, what you're saying, but you hadn't received DQ, then it may slow you down. Again, depends on what you're changing in your unlock request. Depends what you changed after you resubmitted. It's a bit hit and miss, but there isn't. The problem with the Telegram groups is that you could have 100 people who unlocked, and some of them will say, well, I had no impact to my case. I unlocked on this date and I still got DQ'd early. And somebody else is going to be saying, well, yeah, but I unlocked and it seemed to impact my case. And sometimes it's just like, okay, well, yeah, but your unlock was to add the fact that you were, a nuclear rocket scientist. And obviously that's a pretty big deal. Or it's an important unlock, etc. And also the timing could be bad, right? And, the other thing is that DS260s and documents don't all process at the same time. It is not the case that everybody who submitted on May the 15th all got documentarily qualified on the same day, right? Nobody is putting that information out there because that's not true. Cases take different times to process depending on the complexity of the case and the countries involved and the names involved and so on, the background check. So, it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of answer. And so does unlocking affect your case? In some cases it does, in some cases it doesn't. That's all you can really say about that. Okay. Another similar question to the other one. AF3K, DQ in November, embassy. So I think I'm going to give you the same answer that I gave the other person. Casablanca is normally pretty good at scheduling. They've impressed a couple of times in the past. And so, yeah, I would expect you to get a 2NL in December. Now, the only way that won't happen, by the way, and I should have said this to the other person that asked earlier, is if Casablanca Embassy has capacity for, let's say, I don't know, let's just say 50 cases, and your case number 51, right? Then you're going to you're going to have to wait, right? Because 51 in terms of, there might be 50 people that were DQ'd in front of you, and the capacity is going to be taken up by those cases, right? So, but normally speaking, with capacity being high, and I suspect it probably is higher now at Casablanca and most embassies, then yeah, you should be expecting a 2NL in December for a February interview. That's how that should go. Let me know whether that prediction, those two people that I've answered that question for, please let me know if that comes out correct. This question: why does KCC process based on submission date? What is the use of CN? Seems to be a lottery within the lottery. Lower case number could lose chance to be interviewed. Yeah, sort of. Right. So when you get your letter that says congratulations, you're selected, it says in that letter you should process your case quickly because there's no guarantee, right? So you can't really complain if you then wait until December of that year to submit your DS260 that they didn't make the whole world wait because you've got a low case number, but you waited 6 months to submit your DS260 and your documents, right? Sorry, that you can't complain if you didn't read the instructions properly. And I didn't tell people don't submit your DS260, and hopefully nobody else did, right? So if you've got a low case number, and you should submit fairly early. Now, I'm not saying you have to submit on the evening of the lottery announcement. I'm not saying that. I'm saying take your time, make sure you don't make a mistake, but you should obviously submit fairly quickly, right? Now, why do they process DS260s in date order, data submission order? It goes back years. It's always been that way. The DS260s being electronic, I think they went electronic in 2014, DV 2014. I think maybe DV 2013 was also electronic, but around about that time. But prior to that, they were paper-based, right? So they developed a system based on, here's the number of DS260s we received today. We'll process those. But you can imagine there would be stacks of paperwork sort of lined up based on submission date. And so they emulated that paper-based system into the electronic-based system whenever they went electronic on the DS260s, which, as I say, I think was DV 2014. Certainly my own case was an electronic DS260 submission year, we were thinking about processing that way, but actually in the end we processed adjustment of status. So yeah, it's developed from them. So that's the why. Why? Because they've always done it that way. There's no particular justification in law for them to do that. The law doesn't say how they need to do what they do things, right? The law doesn't say you must process in this way or you must process in that way. It sets the objective to say you can issue up to 55,000 visas or 54,750 or whatever the number is this year. But it doesn't say you must issue 55,000 visas. It doesn't say that. It also doesn't say you must process in DS260s in a certain way. It does say, the law does say that case number is supposed to give a preference, supposed to give a sort of a preference to lower case numbers. It's a lot. They call it in the law a lottery rank number. That's what it is. And so the lowest rank numbers should have some sort of preference. In practicality, there is this, connection to DS260 processing too, which in a normal year you wouldn't give a damn about, because they would have been processing in June, July, August, and September. But this year they didn't process in those months. And so now we're all seeing they're very, very behind. And so everybody's losing their freaking minds because, oh my God, my DS260 is not being processed, right? That's why, right? So, yeah, I hope that kind of makes sense. Let's see. Another good question. Let me see if I can find another good question. Let me scroll all the way to the bottom to see what I've got. Wow. Tons of questions. Okay. Just FYI. Oh, wow. I got tons of questions here. I'm jumping towards the end. So I give you permission to repeat your question now if you've got a good question, but for God's sake, don't spam me, right? Please. So I've DS260 submitted May 11th, DQ September 28th. Do you think I'll be interviewed? Your AS 20,000. Do you have to wait for your case number to be current? You see, you're exactly the sort of case that frustrates me a little bit, and I don't mean to pick on you, but you submitted very early. You didn't need to submit that early because your case number is very high anyway. And you got DQ'd on September 28th. It kind of doesn't help anybody for you to be DQ'd for 9 months before you get processed, right? Before you can get interviewed. If you can get interviewed, it's not going to be until probably June or July or August or something of next year, right? So you're just going to have to wait. Will you be interviewed? I don't know. It depends how badly they screw up the numbers this year. Depends on how things go with Iran and Nepal. Nepal normally takes almost its full quota or the full 7% of visas, right? 3,500 visas. If Kathmandu embassy continue to have difficulties in scheduling, that's going to change Asia very, very dramatically, right? Same thing for Iran. 80% of the visas should go to Iran and Nepal, right? So if you're outside of those two countries, there's only 20% of the roughly 8,500 visas available in Asia. For the rest of Asia, for other Asian countries, right? So I don't know which country you belong to, but your case number is relatively high, right? I mean, I know for a fact you're not Nepal. You could be Iran with a case number like that, and you could be rest of Asia, right? So it will depend largely on what happens for Iran and Nepal, right? Okay, let's do this. We're getting stressed because DV 2021 lawsuits took away time from DV 2022. That's true. Said lawsuits are being appealed right now. Probably no movement for them for a year to come. They might get movement earlier than that, but yes, that's a reasonable position to take. I understand why people are stressed. It's bedtime for the kids. Yeah, it is bedtime for the kids. Absolutely. When are 2NLs sent? For example, they announced mid-November that the VB for January. When are the 2NLs for people current in January sent? So the 2NLs for people being interviewed in January have been sent now. There's no more 2NLs for January interviews. The next 2NLs that we'll see being sent out will be middle to the end of this month, and possibly the first couple of days of next month, right, January. And they will be for February interviews, right? So in December, they schedule February interviews. In January, they'll be scheduling March interviews. There's roughly that 2-month delay, right? That's how it works. Will KCC start to process DS2 23? There's there'll be no legal process, right? So we don't know what will happen about lawsuits later on this year. There may need to be lawsuits if we find, and again, I've seen this being discussed. Okay, let me firstly answer your question, then I'll talk about the lawsuit thing. So processing for May for DV 2023 should start when the announcement is made in May. It doesn't mean that all KCC resources have to do that, but in DV 2021, they took resources from 2022 processing and they put those resources into 2021 scheduling, right? And they continue to do that right up until September, into September. Right, so they, and I'm glad they did that. They did as much as they could possibly do. That was because they were being sued. Some people say that lawsuits don't have any effect or whatever. Well, that's bullshit because, from May to September, KCC did a lot of work because of the lawsuits, right? They did a lot of work and got a lot of people. There are thousands of people, probably 10,000 people got their visas in DV 2021 because of the lawsuits prior to 30th September, right? So then some people say, lawsuits don't work. Well, they do work. Otherwise we wouldn't be talking about DV 2022 slowdown, right? So 2023 should be starting in May processing, right? Now, having said that, if there's a lawsuit for DV 2022, which I think is quite likely at this point, I suspect it's going to happen. Then that could change things for 2023 processing, much like we've seen this year. I can't really predict that. There's nothing we can do about that. That's just the way it is. The only real valid response to that would be for KCC to increase the number of staff they have working. They only have 30 people working on DV lottery cases. So they've got their KCC staff numbers about 400 people. Mainly contractors. A vast majority of that 400 people are contractors, but they're split up into different areas, right? And the KCC number of staff that are working on DV is about 30 people, right? Varies a little bit more, a little bit less, but it's about that. They could easily increase that by 2 or 3 people and make a hell of a difference. They only need to have 2 or 3 people working on DV 2023 cases come May, without having to take those people away, and we can get both things done. They can increase the numbers a little bit. They're only paying these people $15 an hour. I mean, they may as well, just pay a few more people. Honestly, drives me bananas. And get them working smart. Somebody posted there was a job. There's a job offer in KCC, and somebody posted that to me this morning saying, it would be nice if you would take that job. I couldn't afford. Number one, I wouldn't live in Kentucky. No, thank you very much. Surrounded by idiots, Republicans, Trump supporters. There's lots of them there. So number one, I couldn't do that. Number two, I couldn't afford. I got bills to pay. I couldn't afford to work for the government wages. This, it just wouldn't be enough. I work in the private sector and I earn, a decent amount of money. And everything I do in DV lottery world is just a hobby. I don't earn any money at all from this. But my main job, my income producing job, pays me a lot of money. It multiple times what the government would pay me to work in Kentucky. So I can't afford to take that job. But thanks for the offer, whoever made that offer. That was funny. Okay. I didn't see the earlier part of this Prince Peter comment here, but yes, so everybody should send you documents. There is no reason, there's no harm in sending documents before being asked, right? Again, another classic, misunderstanding. People say, "Oh, you mustn't send your documents before you're asked." Untrue. There's no harm in sending your documents, right? We understand that now. If you send your documents before they're asked, it may gain you a few days of advantage. It may actually be, in previous years, we've seen that as being, frankly, saving some cases. So it may help you a little bit. It may not help you very much at all, but it won't harm you. So there's no harm, and it may help. Therefore, you should do it, right? If it caused any harm, I wouldn't be telling you to do it. But submit your documents, because it's, it could help you. Okay, so AS800, send your DS260 23rd of June, didn't get DR yet. Could making Asia current early affect me, because a lot of DQ actually happened. You're going to get processed before this is even a question, really, to be honest with you. You just have to be a bit patient. You're probably, unless you've got a very complicated job history, unless you've got very complicated background in terms of the countries you've worked in or lived in or visited, or a complicated name, if you've got a relatively simple case, I suspect you're probably going to find your DS260s will be processed within 3 to 4 weeks from now, at most, right? So, and so I suspect you're going to be DQ'd before, before the regions go current. If regions go current, we'll probably see that in the VBs being announced in March or April, maybe May, but it will be about that time. And I suspect you're going to be DQ'd before that time, right? So, don't worry about it, is basically the answer. Curtis announced a lawsuit regarding the embassy in Baghdad. What is your opinion about it? Well, I think I mentioned this earlier, Shakir. I don't know much about it. Contrary to there's so many bullshit things. Contrary to popular belief or some people's belief, I don't work with Curtis or with any of the lawyers. I don't work with them, and certainly he doesn't run it by me for my opinion before he decides to do a lawsuit. He's not going to do that. So in that particular lawsuit, I was aware that he'd announced something, but I hadn't looked into it very much. I don't know. I suspect you need to have a look at that if you've got, if you're waiting for Baghdad to schedule your case or to be scheduled at Baghdad. All right. So make your own choice about that. I'll try and read up on it over the next few days. Will KCC start to process? I answered that one earlier. Shakir, don't spam. Joseph Cedillo, I think SA 2000 received DQ in December. What do you think about my CN? Well, your case number is great. And it's SA. Sorry, I read it as AS. SA 2000. Yeah, it's a little bit high, but it's not that high. DQ in December. Yeah, that's great. Visa Bulletin right now is for SA. Let's see, Visa Bulletin. What's the number for SA? Let me just check that. Don't know it off the top of my head. So South America right now is at 900. Yeah, so you're gonna have to wait a couple of months. So it's a little bit early for you, but your case number it's not stupidly high. It's not too high, and you're already DQ. So you're in good shape. Just have to be patient. Okay. Amy Fruit Tube. That's an interesting name. Need to apply for a returning residence visa due to extenuating circumstances out the US for a couple of years. Neurosurgery. Very high risk of no-fly pregnancy and then COVID hit. How easy is it to obtain? Right, so the returning resident visa is an SB1. I mainly focus on DV lottery, but I just happen to know a little bit more about some aspects of other types of visas. Returning resident visa, Amy, is an SB1 application. You make that through your local embassy. So you're in London, you would apply through London. And I suspect, but I don't know for a fact, that I suspect that consular officers processing SB1s are probably taking COVID into account. The story that it sounds like is that you had reasons not to travel, and they were good reasons, and that's why you didn't go back, and then COVID hit, right? Well, COVID hasn't stopped you from traveling all the way up until now, so you've got to explain the whole sort of period of time, how it's been difficult, etc. But, make your SB1 application. I don't know what the approval stats are like, but I would guess your chance of approval is pretty high. And if you've been out the country for 2 years, that is probably the best way for you to go forward. There is a certain sort of logic, if you like, that another way to approach that is simply to attempt an entry, but it's stressful. And if you've got a family, etc., you don't want to go through that. So go and get the SB1 and make your case in front of a consular officer there. Make it about COVID and all the difficulties that's presented and the difficulties with traveling. And I suspect you'll probably be approved. But other than that, I don't know much about it. Okay. 102 NL sent. I think I've already answered. Oh, hang on. Yeah, I already answered that. Answer that one. AF 47,000. Does my 2-month-old son need to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 in case we get a chance to be scheduled for interview? No. Right now, there are no COVID vaccinations in America for kids until at least 5 years old. They don't recommend yet having vaccinations for kids under 5. And so for sure they won't expect you to get that. But basically, with DV interviews and with immigrants in general, there's an assumption that whatever vaccinations you'll need will be administered by the physician during the medical that you have prior to interview. And so as an immigrant entering the States, you're not actually required to show any any vaccination in that normal way. There are some requirements now to show vaccinations, but it's not the same for an immigrant entering as it is for a non-immigrant entering. Right? So, but to answer your question, no, your 2-month-old child won't be vaccinated, and that's perfectly fine. Good luck with your entry. But your 47,000, I don't know what the position will be by the time you actually get to interview. That'll be, late into the year next year. Will KCC start to process? Yeah, I think we've already answered this question. Leas, just a question. Sent DS in May, opened it in August, sent it again the same month of August. Yeah, so you're asking, is it May or is it August? Again, I think I answered this earlier where I said it depends on the type of change that you made, what position, where in the processing your case had already got to by the time you unlocked your case and so on. So it's a little bit difficult to sort of be precise. It will vary. Some people have had the experience that it's delayed their cases a little bit. Other people have found no delay from unlocking, right? So, you just have to wait and see. Por favor, en español, metro titulada. My Spanish is terrible. You wouldn't like my. I listened to Chuck Cook speaking Spanish on his cases, and he's so fluent. I don't want to try and compete with Chuck over that. I live in a bilingual house. My wife is Spanish. My daughter speaks Spanish better than I do, but my Spanish is horrible. So I'm sorry, you'll have to just sort of deal with the English. So lo siento por eso. How are you? Is 22K Asia considered high for DV 2022? Got DQ? Yeah, it's quite high. In some years, we would never get to that. So this year is going to be, interesting, shall we say, in terms of where they can get to. We might see the regions go current, but with 119,000 selectees, we shouldn't see the regions go current. That's the reality. Whether it'll get to 22K Asia depends on what happens in Nepal and Iran. Okay, you're in Turkey. Okay, but it depends on Iran and Nepal. Okay, I think I explained that earlier. Waiting for a police report. Can I send my documents without the police report? No, you got to wait. You have to wait. They won't. You'll just cause yourself more hassle by sending an incomplete set of documents. So you have to wait until you've got all the documents and then send them. Do you think the prompt reply to inquiries about documents received and they're currently processing a template answer to say send documents, or do they really check the case? I think they are checking the case. This is what I was saying earlier, Jenny. They actually are, at least some of the staff there are checking the case. There are plenty of times, and I understand where your perspective comes from here. There are plenty of times when they just seem to send out template responses that make no sense. And sometimes it's almost like, and I have seen KCC send a lot of emails with some standard template email, and it literally is just nonsense. It should never have gone out. But I think just recently I'm seeing evidence that they are actually responding more correctly. Okay, so we'll see. We'll have to see how it goes. Okay, Jenny. Hey. Just looking for dumb path. I would work for free for KCC. Process hell out of a number of cases. Sign me up. Yeah. It's frustrating, isn't it? What about Yemen in DV 2022? So Yemen has got difficulties with the embassy, right? So like Afghanistan, like Iraq, like a number of countries, the only good thing is that Yemen has an assigned, I don't know which embassy it is, but Yemen, I do believe, has an assigned embassy to do with it. So what that means is when you're a resident in Yemen and you can't interview in Yemen, they will automatically assign you to another embassy. So, just wait for that. Of course, you've got to be careful with traveling. I mean, I think things are a little bit better in Yemen now, but you've got to be careful in traveling. People in Afghanistan, for example, have got a much tougher time traveling, I think, at the moment. It's pretty scary. So yeah, hopefully it will be okay for you. All right. It's been a long session, so I'll just do one or two more questions and then I'll move on with the day. Case number is AS 15,000. Didn't submit my DS260 in June, but I still didn't get an email. What? And I submitted my DS260 in June, but I still didn't get an email from KCC regarding submitting the documents. Right, first of all, submit your documents, right? There's no harm in submitting your documents. Submitting a DS260 declares immigrant intent. And so I tell some people not to do that if they've got a very high case number. Your case number isn't very high, so I wouldn't have told you not to submit your DS260. But once you've submitted your DS260, there's no further harm in submitting your documents, right? So go ahead and submit your documents. You don't have to wait to be asked. So, go ahead and do that. Is it normal that you haven't heard? Yes, it's sort of normal. It's not normal. It's not correct. It's a sign of the backlogged nature of what's going on at KCC, the slow amount of work, the fact they didn't work for 4 months. But, it's not a surprise, let's say, that a DS260 submission in June hasn't had a response. That's the same for many people, okay? So bit of patience, and hopefully within a few weeks you'll get that. Okay, one more question if I can find something new and interesting. This will be the last one. Sakir says, is there any hope that my number will be current in the visa bulletin? Is it possible to have an interview appointment without sending email or documents? Is this possible? If you don't send your DS260 and you don't send your documents, you won't get an interview. No doubt about that, right? If you're not current, you won't get an interview. There's no doubt about that. I don't know that your number will be current. because you didn't tell me a number. I didn't see it. I don't see it around there, but I don't know what your number is. But we'll have to wait and see how the numbers go. Okay, that'll be it. Thanks for listening in. I hope that was useful. I would hope that it's cleared up some of the confusion that there is out there, but I bet it hasn't. I bet people will continue to be confused, and it's frustrating. Just try and just try and stay focused, be patient, be calm. But let's see what's happening over the next 3 or 4 weeks. It's a critical time. They have got to increase the processing speed. If they don't, it's going to be a problem. But if they do, there's a chance. If they start processing now, and I was thinking of actually laying out the numbers, but I won't lay out the numbers in this video. But if we start to see some decent performance now, there is time to save DV 2022. And to get a pretty good result. There is time if they do it now, right? So let's fingers crossed. Let's hope they do it now. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me this morning, and have a great day. All right. Bye-bye now.